Hello, Michael.
How's it going?
Fine, you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome. I didn't know your name was Kweju. Now
Uh,
I've seen
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So Chris is just joining.
Okay.
Um, I've had a few people who've said that they aren't going to be able to make it. So
Then.
I apologize. It might be a bit thin. Hi, Chris. But we're going to record this anyway.
Mhm.
So it almost will be like, the podcast that we do. I don't know if you've seen them, but it's usually then just one person. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Kirsty. How are you?
I'm fine. And this is Michael.
Hey, Chris.
Michael,
Think you froze.
Chris.
Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Okay. I'm just gonna give it 1 minute. I have told people in the group, so the others hopefully they will come. If not, I think we're just gonna start.
Go for it.
Yeah. Um, oh, what am I getting? Okay, nothing. I'm gonna just start, and if people come, then that's fine. So, I was actually gonna do a bit of an introduction, so just humor me while I talk.
Fantastic.
Okay. So, hello everyone, and welcome to our first book club of 2026 and our review of Hold by Michael Donkor. And we're delighted to welcome the author here himself. So, Akwaba, Michael,
Hello. Thanks for having me.
our pleasure. So before I introduce Michael in a bit more detail, um, and kickstart the discussion on Hold, I wanted to just thank everyone for joining. And also just to say, if you're a new member, if you haven't been to our book club before, then let me just tell you a little bit about what we are all about. So we started our book club in 2024 in September. Hi, Neil. And we've we've been meeting approximately for about a month every month we meet. And we've been reading books by Ghanaian authors and books about Ghana, but we also sprinkle in the odd book from an African country. So we've toured Nigeria, we've read Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, and we've been to Cameroon and we've read Ferdinand Oyono's book, which is called Houseboy. And they're both really fantastic books. So if you've not read them, we would encourage you to read them. And then you can catch our previous book reviews and our interviews with authors by joining our Substack on Academy Magazine. And you can listen to the podcast, or you can actually see us talking about these books on YouTube. And we've got some club members that have actually written reviews, so you can read those as well. So we'll leave a link in the bio to all of that. So, who is Michael? Well, Michael is a London-born British Ghanaian who has a professional background as an English teacher and is the author of the debut book Hold, which we'll be reading today or reviewing today. So Hold was published in 2018, and interestingly, in the US, it's called The Housemaid. So hopefully we can get some insight into why there's a difference in the name. And his second book is called Grow Where They Fall, and that was published in 2024. So with Hold, HarperCollins described it as a powerful new British literary voice. So congratulations on that, Michael. Um, so what's Hold about? So it's been described as a coming of age novel, and it follows the story of three teenage girls, two who live in a suburb called Daban in Kumasi in Ghana's Asante region, and they're both housemaids to a well-to-do family. And the third teenager we meet later on in the book is from South London. So during the course of the book, the worlds of one of the housemates maids called Belinda and a London-born teenager Amma, they collide. Belinda has to leave her home and friend Mary, who is a younger housemaid. I think she's around 12 years old, and I think Belinda's about 17 or 18. And she goes to live with the Otus. I think I've pronounced, is it Otus? Have I said it properly?
Ottawa. Ottawa.
Otus in Brixton. So she is handpicked to move because the Ottos, who are a friend of the family that she works for, are so impressed by her work. But rather than her being a housemaid in London, they want her to befriend their daughter Amma, who seems to be going through a difficult emotional path at the moment. And the Ottos think that Belinda's presence is going to help. So from there, we learn more about what's troubling Amma and how the initially frosty relationship between the two girls evolves. The book is contained within 4 British or European seasons, spring, summer, winter, autumn, winter, and charts that 1 year period of Belinda's life and starts and ends with the same scene, which is a funeral scene. This book explores themes around migration, friendship, family, shame, forgiveness, and so much more, which hopefully we can go into. So thanks so much, Michael, for writing this book, and let the game begin. Hi,
Hey,
Rhoda.
Hi, can you
How
hear
are you?
me?
Yes, can hear you. So
Okay.
just before we start, I think it's relevant for you, Michael, to know a bit about us because we're sort of strewn all over the place.
uh-huh,
So,
uh-huh.
Chris, I'm going to get you to just say, well, I've said your name, but where you're from, that kind of thing.
Oh,
Where
okay.
you're,
So,
yeah.
so I was originally from Liverpool, in the northwest of England, um, and then I moved over to London following university, and then I moved to Croydon, and now I'm based in Kent, the Medway area. So I know Abina or Kirsty because I met her at university, and so our friendship has been um, it's lasted decades,
Yeah.
and I've joined the book club since the beginning, and it's been interesting. We've read a lot of interesting books, and it's been a pleasure discussing all of them.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Tennille, can I get you to introduce yourself? Just because I can see you've got a wonderful background.
I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. So you guys hear me? Actually,
Can't hear
I
you
can put
very
it.
well.
Okay, okay. I can put it in the chat again.
Tennille says she's going to put it in the chat. She's going to
Oh,
explain
okay.
stuff in
But
the
you
chat.
can tell. Okay,
Yeah,
Michael, you can
it's
tell
very
she's in
fabulous.
Ghana.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
tell. Big giveaway. Yeah. And
yeah.
then over to Rhoda. Where are you, Rhoda?
So I'm in Labadi, Ghana.
Okay, very nice.
Eh, Yeah, and I've been with
Oh,
Academy Magazine. Um, I started writing, and I hosted some re book reviews, and from then I hosted authors. It was a book segment, book plate, where we hosted authors, and we interviewed them about their books. And then from then, we are here, the book club. The book club has been an interesting one where we talk about, like Chris said, interesting books. And we've had the chance to speak with authors as well, and both in the diaspora and in the motherland. So far, so good.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Thank you.
awesome. And Jennifer, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
You want me to introduce myself?
Introduce. Yes, please.
Okay, hi. Hello, I'm Jennifer. I am in London. I have been, I guess, following Academy since it started, but I joined the book club recently. I think this is like my third book now that I've joined for. Yeah, I'm Ghanaian and British, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's it. Hi.
Hello.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so normally what we do, Michael, is we just explore what we liked about the book and we explore some of the themes that you talk about. So I don't know if okay, I think there's a comment in here. 1 second. Who's okay? I'm just going to read Tennille's out before I start. Sorry, I will introduce myself. Oh, I am originally from North Carolina in the US. I moved my family to Ghana almost 2 years ago, and the book club has helped me to learn more about Ghanaian culture. There you go.
Great. I feel
Cool.
very well informed now. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So, what we normally do is we invite people to talk about what they liked about the book, what they found challenging, some of the themes around the book. So, Um, I don't know if anyone wants to start. If not, I am happy to kickstart everything. Okay, so For me, I think, Michael, you have a really beautiful turn of phrase. I started writing out little bits of quotes that I really liked. You've got this really nice way of capturing the scene. And some of my favorite parts of the book are in London. And I'll tell you why. Spencer Road is a road that I was going to live on. I was gonna rent there, and it's quite close to where I work as well. So it was really familiar. So you just talking about Brixton, I've spent loads and loads of time in Brixton. So all of that really, you really captured it well for me. It really came alive. And one of my favorite scenes is the Missy Elliott scene
Yeah.
in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really like that. That whole sort of party vibe and some of the words that you use. So you described one bit where there was a guy he was like Calibaneth. So he had dreads, the white guy with dreads, and he pulled this girl to him, and they were attacking each other with their lips and their tongues. And you can just immediately imagine what that looks like. So I think you've got a really powerful and you've got a gift in being able to capture those scenes. And I think you did the same with the scenes in Ghana. So I felt like I had the best of both worlds because I could relate to both. So
You.
that's one thing I really liked about your writing.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you. And I think to me, it was really important that both worlds were kind of captured in the same level of detail. Because one thing I was really trying to avoid when writing the book was sort of exoticizing Ghana and kind of making it seem like this kind of strange and wonderful place for a white readership. And actually, what I wanted to do was to show that there are extraordinary things about Ghana, things that are really, really unique and very particular to Ghana and very beautiful about Ghana. And equally, there are things that are strange and wonderful and beautiful about Brixton. And one of the things that was great about having Belinda as the central character and the kind of window through which you saw everything was that when she arrives in Brixton, Brixton is like another planet to her in lots of
mm,
ways. She's seeing it actually as the exotic place. You know, to her, going to Kumasi Market is not really that unusual. It doesn't really have anything that's unfamiliar to her. But her getting on the 133 from Herne Hill to Streatham High Road is a completely bizarre experience. And so it was really it was really fun for me because at the time when I wrote a lot of this, I was living in Brixton. It was really fun for me to look at this place that I lived in and know very well. And I lived close to Spencer Road, but to look at it through
haha.
someone else's eyes and to kind of think, yeah, what is particular about this place? What makes Brixton Brixton? What gives Herne Hill its specific Herne Hillness?
Yeah, well, I think it works really well. I don't know if any, please, if you want to jump in, I have a list of things that I'm quite happy to talk about. But if anyone wants to jump in and talk about that particular point, please do. Kwame's not on the chat at the moment, but hopefully he'll come because he's written a review in Chi, which we've published about
Wow.
the
Okay.
book. And one of the things that he mentioned is the bus numbers. So
Yeah.
he says he listens to a lot of UK rap and
Yeah.
they refer to it these bus numbers. So obviously it made me think, oh, of course, because in Ghana you don't have bus
Yeah. Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that must seem a bit different. I mean, for me, I remember when I moved to Ghana, it was odd to even find out where to stand to catch a bus, whereas it's a different system here.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm just going to read out what Tanil says. She says, you did well balancing them both in terms of descriptions and visualizations. I felt home at both locations in the book.
Good. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting way of phrasing it, like feeling at home, because a lot of the novel is about home and where we feel at home and how we start to feel at home. Because actually, in lots of ways, Belinda, when the novel starts, she isn't at home. You know, she literally is not
Mm,
at home. You know, she
mm,
should feel at home because she's in Ghana, but it's a a place that she doesn't feel deeply connected to. She's there because she's told to be there, and she's there out of obligation. But then actually, when there are all the flashbacks to her life in the village with her mum, she also doesn't really feel at home there because of the way she's treated in the village or the suspicions that the other people in the village have about her mum, what her mum's up to. It's not a particularly inviting or comfortable environment for her there. And then she comes to London, and again, there's this sense of like, I'm not quite at home here either. But what I hope the novel does is ask questions about what home can be, because I think our first thought is that home is like a geographical location, but actually the novel is more about how relationships and friendships can be a home. So eventually, the relationship between Mary and Belinda at the start of the novel, that is the home. In that strange house in Durban, the relationship between those two is the home. And equally, eventually in London, the relationship between Amma and Belinda, when they have some understanding, that becomes a home for both of them. And I think one of the real sadnesses about the conflict that eventually comes with or between Belinda and Amma is that the home that they've created for each other is shattered, or it can't hold the differences between the two of them. So home is really important in the novel. It's a really kind of big theme, I think.
Mm, yeah. I apologize. You know what? I can't make my my light is weird, so I apologize for being dark or whatever the word is. I can't change it. Just what you said about the relationship and I guess this positioning housemaids as a central character. One of the things that I wanted to say again, a sort of plus was I thought it was really refreshing that the maids weren't maltreated. So most stories related to housemaids are not positive, but there was none of that. I was expecting something to happen that was going to be like that, but it just wasn't.
Mhm.
And I'm interested to know why you decided to go down that path.
Yeah, it's interesting. This whole idea of centralizing the house girl and giving voice to the house girl, because it was, yeah, when I started publicizing this book in the UK, the house girl element of it was something that white readers in particular were quite taken aback by. They because the concept of a house girl, they don't really know what it is.
Mm,
So there was a bit of kind of explaining of that. And obviously, when talking to Ghanaian readers or readers from actually anywhere in Africa or anywhere in the global majority, people are much more kind of au fait with the idea of like, yeah, you've got someone younger in the house, but there's this sort of transactional thing of you're paying for them to go to school, and that does feel uncomfortable, but this is a kind of practice, and everyone kind of knows what's going on. So that was an interesting element to it. I think more specifically in relation to your question about not presenting a sort of story of abuse of the house girl.
yeah.
I think there were two elements to that. One was that I have been in houses in Ghana where there are house girls like many, many times, and it's something that I've seen and encountered a lot when I've been in Ghana. And actually, I know that there are cases of all sorts of abuse and maltreatment, but actually, in my experience, I haven't seen it. And I
Mm,
what I was really interested in writing it was sort of writing about this actually quite strange part of the informal Ghanaian economy. It's completely unregulated. It's completely
mm.
unregulated. No one has any protections. No one has any right. There are no house girl unions, you know.
Ah,
And yeah, what I had seen in many cases was that it somehow kind of worked. It somehow sort of worked. And so I wanted to kind of look at that. I think also I was very wary of um, presenting presenting the life of the house girl as sort of like an example of African backwardness or African darkness or this kind of primitive tradition that we have over here. I just didn't want it to be presented in that way because I think that was the expectation.
mm,
Um, yeah, and instead I wanted to sort of show something else, something more complicated than that.
mm, mm. Okay. Thank you. Please, if you have questions, please just butt in and ask them. Otherwise, I will keep going because I have loads of questions. Okay then.
You could
So,
just keep going.
yeah. Oh no, I meant to everyone else. Like, I don't want to hog the scene. So if you've got a question, please do. Please ask. Um,
Well, it's not a question, sorry. It's regarding what I've noticed about the book, regarding Belinda. When she was in London, um, in the household, she was carrying on doing the house duties,
Mhm,
especially
mhm,
when she didn't have to do so,
mhm,
especially when that was not her main purpose.
mhm.
It was as if it was like an old habit, which,
Exactly.
she didn't want to get rid of. And so um, it made me think that she enjoyed doing the house duties and the chores and all that stuff, because I think it calms her down. It gives her a sense of purpose, and it reminds her of home as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think the the fact that she continues to clean when she doesn't need to is very telling of um, someone who is not accustomed to freedom, I suppose, or someone who's not accustomed to um, independence. And I really wanted to show with that fixation that Belinda has on cleaning, the real contrast between her and Amma. Amma, who's sort of like careless and spinning out and having her rebellion over here. Belinda would not even dream of doing that, really. She is focused and, practical and all those sorts of things. So it was kind of a way of really emphasizing how different these two girls are. And I think also the continued cleaning is about Belinda's sense of who she is and her sense of herself as someone who is unclean because of what her mother is supposedly doing or might be doing back in Ghana. I think in Belinda's head, by continuing to clean, it's like a way of cleansing both her mother and herself of this dirtying thing that her mum has been been getting up to. Um, Yeah, and I think also it does play a role in kind of calming her down, as you say, because Belinda is and she would not describe herself in these terms, and I don't think the Ghanaian adults that she lives amongst would describe herself in these terms, but she's a very anxious person, and one of the ways that I think she manages her anxiety is by the act of cleaning because cleaning is predictable. It's predictable. You start in the room at the top of the house and you work your way down, and you know that these cleaning products are the ones to use, and you clean in the clockwise direction, and there are rules to follow. You follow the rules. Once you follow the rules, the room looks tidy. So there's something I think comforting for Belinda about that, and it's a comfort that she can't find in other areas of this new world that she's in, which is so strange and unpredictable and chaotic. So she uses cleaning to sort of, yeah, balance out the kind of chaos that she's surrounded by when she's in the UK.
Completely agree with that. I think there's a chapter 21 where she talks about scouring the bath's waxy ring of scum. Like
Mm.
you're really good at describing these really nasty, um, I don't know what they're called, examples of things. So my sort of favorite horrible part is the brush with the poo on it, and then she picks it and she doesn't even wear gloves. And I was just like, but also I need to finish reading that part. So that was one. It reminded me, we read as a group, what's his name? Ayikwe Arma's book, The
Yeah, yeah,
Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born.
yeah,
And the bit where they have to go through the toilet or the shithole and they're covered in poo. Obviously it's not the same
yeah,
because there's a lot more shite, but
yeah.
this one just reminded me because that one made me want to vom as well.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
there was
good.
a bit, yeah, there was a bit where it says Belinda had to repeatedly pinch herself and 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 said a price needed to be paid, and that's when she started cleaning. So I
Yes.
did feel a bit like, I'm not aligning it to cutting, but
Yeah,
when
yeah,
people
no,
feel, yeah, there's a pain that they need to get rid of, for
yeah.
her it was cleaning.
Yeah, I think that's a very good comparison to make with self-harm because, and I'm not an expert on self-harm or the psychology of people who self-harm, but I do know that sometimes there's a feeling for people who self-harm, particularly young people, that there's like a pain that can't be articulated or that they're not allowed to articulate. And again, one of the things I think that is important about the novel and maybe what it's sort of saying about some Ghanaian families is that lots of things remain unsaid. You know, there's a lot of things that are not said in this novel until the very end. And because Belinda can't say them, she finds another way of expressing herself. And the way that she expresses herself and her frustration and her desire to be better or different or purer is through cleaning or is through doing things that are sort of like punishing. That's her language, if you like, because there isn't another language granted to her or another language that's sort of deemed to be acceptable. You know, so if you think
Mm,
about in the Otawo's household, particularly with Nana, there's so much talking about everything other than the stuff that really needs to be talked about, you know? And the same with Belinda's mother. Like there's so much talking around topics, um, or avoiding things, or like focus on this practical thing. What are feelings? Like don't talk about feelings, you know?
mm,
Uh, so Belinda needs to find a way of it. It's a form of self-expression, you know, for her.
mm.
It's just quite a weird one.
Very weird. Very. Rhoda, Jen, did you have anything you wanted to? Yeah, go for it, Jen.
Sure. No, I just wanted to ask. I always love asking, I think, authors about just what you're doing in terms of how did you come up with this story. So, did you write this? Were you in Ghana? Were you in the UK? Do you have like house help around that had a similar story? I just the background in terms of like how it came together. Did you spend
Yeah.
so your tree as well? Did you spend some time in Ghana or are you fully British, born here? Like some of that.
So my background is that I was born in the UK. Both of my parents are Ghanaian, but I spent lots of summers in Ghana, in Kumasi in particular. And we'd always stay with family, and there were always house girls. And actually, in particular, I remember I think I was about 9, and we were staying at my auntie's house, and there was a house girl called Belinda. And if I was 9, she was about 10 or 11. And Belinda was sort of, well, real life Belinda was actually more in sort of personality terms. She was more like Mary is in the novel. So real life Belinda was like naughty and like didn't really seem that interested in being a house girl. And people were always like trying to find Belinda. It's always like, Belinda, Belinda, where's Belinda? You know, like constantly trying to get hold of Belinda because Belinda was like off chatting to boys or doing whatever she shouldn't be doing. But the thing that I found really uh, fascinating about real life Belinda was that because she was sort of the same age as me, I wanted to hang out with her. It was the summer holidays, I didn't have anything to do. I've got two older sisters who are like 10 years older than me. So they were off doing their like grown-up stuff. And there was me just like, what am I going to do for a whole summer? Oh, look, there's someone who could potentially be a friend. But I was told very explicitly by my aunt, whose house we were staying in, Belinda is not a friend for you to play with. Like she's not a friend. You're like an English boy, and she's here to work. And as a 9-year-old, I sort of understood the distinction that my aunt was making, but also it didn't quite make sense to me. So I was just like, but why can't I just play with her? And that sort of separation, I just was always really interested in it. And then, so that was when I was like 9, 10. And then when I decided I wanted to be a novelist, that just the sort of experience of someone who is sort of put on the other side of this very clear distinction, I was just really fascinated in because I didn't know what her life was. I didn't know how she'd ended up in the house. I didn't know where her family were. I didn't know that whether she was going to be in domestic labor for the whole of her life, if that was the idea, or whether it was a short-term thing. No one really gave me that insight. So I kind of thought, okay, let me imagine. And so that's kind of where the book came from. And I guess it also came from my desire as someone then who was in their like 20s, I guess early 30s, to think about Ghanaian identity and Ghanaian culture as I understood it at the time, um, and to think about it from a kind of British Ghanaian perspective as well. So in some ways, the book is about kind of Ghanaianness, British Ghanaianness, what young British Ghanaians sort of think of Ghanaianness, what Ghanaians think of British Ghanaians, and how those kinds of identities are in conversation with each other. as well as being a novel about this house girl and what she makes of being in the UK. So it was a combination of lots of different things.
Thank you. It does make sense a lot. I was wondering, how did he come up with this idea? What was he doing? Was he there? So it's definitely
Yeah,
got a lot of perspective because I think as well, I think you're British as well. We're not there, isn't it? So we don't really know. I mean, we go on holiday, but we're not there all the time.
yeah,
So yeah, I was wondering if you'd spoken to her, like was that really her life? So yeah, thank you for giving me that
yeah.
context.
And I think also that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have the Kama character of Amma um, in the novel and to be a really central part of the novel because she is a representative of that perspective of knowing something of Ghana, having kind of one foot in the Ghana story, but also feeling very British and also feeling quite um, alien from the Ghanaian experience as well. So Amma's really important, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. You're on mute, Kirsty.
Sorry.
All right.
I was just saying that thank you, Jennifer. Rhoda just echoed what you said, Jennifer. Has real life Belinda read, been told about the book, or you lost contact with her?
Yeah, lost contact a long time ago. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if
Oh,
she's found, if a copy of the book has found its way to her, that would be very special.
well, your book's 8 years old, so possibly, I don't know how easy or hard it was for the Ghanaians in Ghana to access this book, but it should be available, shouldn't
Yeah,
it? I don't
and
know.
it's definitely available in Accra. Um, Elsewhere in the country, I don't know. I don't know.
Mm, okay. Just going back to what I liked, I think out of all of the characters, Mary was a special one for me. I don't know
Mm.
if other people have said that or
Everyone
if anyone
loves
else here thinks
Mary.
that.
Everyone loves
Yeah.
Mary.
Yeah. So I was surprised. I think everyone's read to the end, but I was surprised that she was the one that passes. Sorry, I've ruined it, but I just thought that out of everyone, she was the one that seemed to be boundaryless. So
Yeah,
everyone else, in her speech, she was just saying whatever, and she was the youngest, so that makes sense. I really like the zoo part where she's just,
yeah,
desiring to see the crocodile and all of that stuff. So, but at the same time, she's an adult, like she, in a sense, she's that wise person that Belinda speaks to. So I really liked that dynamic.
yeah, yeah,
Also, I like the way that Belinda keeps being in touch with Mary, because when she first moved to the UK, she was like a stranger in the UK, and she was a bit overwhelmed
yeah,
because it was a strange new world. And so when she was speaking with Mary and filling her in on what's happening in the UK, it's like it's her only connection to Ghana.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's, we were talking about things that Belinda does to comfort herself when she's in the UK and she doesn't have familiarity around her. One of those things is cleaning, as we discussed. And the other thing is talking to Mary and maintaining the relationship that they had and the power dynamic that they had. Belinda's the sort of older, wiser one, and Mary's the sort of playful one. Keeping that going is very grounding for Belinda. And also, I think, Mary is a source of fun and is very entertaining. And certainly for the early part of Belinda's time in the UK, there's not that much fun. Amma is difficult and cold and distant. And so going back to Mary is an opportunity for a bit of lightness for Belinda. And also, I suppose the other thing about the phone calls between Belinda and Mary is that for me, they felt like a very honest and accurate part of the immigrant experience. So, one of the things that I remember really distinctly about my childhood and growing up in the UK with Ghanaian parents was how every weekend there would be the phone calls from Ghana. There were always phone calls. Like it was like, okay, it's like Saturday evening, like the phone call's gonna come, they've got the phone card, da, 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 da. It was such a it was such a kind of marker of our difference from like the white kids that I was at school of. They didn't have like their relatives calling in this very formalized way, like every weekend to get the news and to tell you what's going on in the village and all the stuff and whatever. So it felt like that if I hadn't included that and made them quite a prominent part, it would be missing out something of the reality of what people experience when they leave Ghana and they come here and they want to maintain a connection to back home.
Mm. Yeah, I really valued that. It did feel very authentic, um, that part. I wanted to explore the role of women in the book. So we have majority of the people that are in the book are women, except for Miss Dr. Otuo and then Uncle. But
Yes.
I think out of all of them, you get a little bit from both of those men, but I don't know, it felt really fleeting and
Yeah.
not as I don't know what the word is, as invested in.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they were like
Adam.
ornamental. They were
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why as a man as well, writing about women so prominently, lots of different women. Talk
Yeah.
to us about that.
Yeah. So the two male characters, the kind of patriarchs, are very deliberately shadowy figures. They're very deliberately written on the edges of the story. Um, and the focus, as you say, is on women's relationships with women and girls' relationships with girls. And I think there are a few reasons why that was my intention. One is because of the family that I grew up in. So I grew up in, sorry, a very female-dominated household. So the house I lived in was my mum, two sisters, and I'm the youngest. And so a lot of my childhood was spent kind of watching, observing the interactions of these three women, like quite powerful women, and being quite sometimes like mystified by what was going on by the three of them, amongst the three of them, sometimes like really interested, sometimes really amused. But the relationships between Ghanaian women, I was just really interested in and wanted to write about and think through. And also, one of the things that I kind of felt was that sometimes, not always, in Ghanaian families, there's a sort of sense of the man is the head of the house, and the man is like in charge. And for that reason, I sort of didn't want to write about a man. I wanted to write about the kind of story that you might not expect, you know? And the question about me myself being a man and yet writing about women and women's experiences is that the main question that I get when talking about this novel. And when I was writing, I just didn't even think about it. Like I
Mm,
didn't, oh, am I allowed to do this? Is this wrong? Am I going to get it right? I just thought, okay, I've got Belinda. I think also as well in practical terms, I think I'm right in saying it's much more common that you would have house girls than house boys. Like, well, that's kind of what I saw more often.
mm,
Um, and so I just got on with it, and I didn't really think about the gender thing very much at all. And then when the book came out, everyone was like, "But you're a man, and why have you done this? Like, why didn't you write about
mm,
boys?" And then suddenly I thought, "Oh yes, it's quite surprising," but I just didn't consider it, and I'm really glad that I didn't whilst I was writing because I felt quite free, you know.
mm.
And I think as a writer, feeling free is the most important thing in the world. Like not feeling that you have to do it this way or that way, or that you're not allowed to do this or you can't say that is so kind of limiting. And as a creative, just having possibility is really important, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I know your sisters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I'm just wondering, did you feel like you needed to tap into some parts of that experience that you wouldn't have known, like period, whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I had a good start, a good head start, I think, in comparison to other male writers who might be trying to write about female experience, given that I've got my sisters and my mum. There are a
Mm,
lot of things that I had absorbed. Um, and also a lot of my closest friends are women. Um, and I talk to them a lot about their experiences as women, and I approach those conversations very much from a perspective of like curiosity and really wanting to know and not assuming anything at all. And so I think, yeah, writing about female experience, not thinking like, oh, I've got the answer, but I've got these experiences that I can draw on, but this is not definitive in any way. And
Mm,
I'm not trying to impress anyone with my kind of knowledge of women. That was also kind of helpful too. I wasn't trying to prove a point or anything, you know?
yeah, yeah, cool. Neil, you've got your mute. Oh, okay. Once again, if you do want to chip in, please just turn off your mute button and speak.
Yeah, go for it.
Especially, yeah, if there's something that you think work right now. What I wanted to, I thought it would be nice to then just sort of segue into exploring sexuality. And I
Yeah.
don't have the page to hand. I do have my book. Where's my book? But I don't have it to hand. But there was this hint I felt like at the beginning of the book about the exploration of the body, and it felt like there was this hint about lesbianism at the beginning with the shower scene. I don't know if you remember the bit that I mean, but I felt like there was something in there about maybe Mary seeing, I
Yeah,
might have
yeah,
read it
yeah,
wrong,
yeah, yeah,
Mary
yeah, yeah,
seeing, yeah, Belinda. So I
yeah.
felt like there was this hint there. And then later on we learn about Amma,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was a part that I remember where Amma's thinking about what it would be like to kiss Belinda,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that and that stuff. So again, I know that we all know about, especially in Ghana, the sort of attitude to homosexuality and lesbianism. And you've written a book as a British Ghanaian that has gone everywhere, and is read by all communities. So 8 years later, I'd be interested to know what people have, how they've responded to that, and just talk us through you deciding to explore this side of being human.
Yeah, and that's a nice way of phrasing it, like being human, because that's very much what it is, isn't it?
Mm,
I think, yeah, the bit at the beginning where Mary sort of spies on Belinda when she's in the shower, I think there is a sort of element of like sexual curiosity, um, in a quite a playful way, I think, and in a way that also felt quite, again, authentic and natural to me in that sort of sense of a younger girl looking at an older girl thinking like, what am I going to be like? What does it look like? You know, I can sort of, it felt very, very Mary to do that sort of thing. Um, and I think Belinda's response to that, which is quite strong, because some people might just be like, oh, get off, don't look at me. But Belinda is quite forceful. And that's partly to do with Belinda's own shame around sexuality of any kind because of what is going on with her mum, or what's supposedly going on with her mum. And again, that sort of sexual shame that Belinda has, um, is part of the reason why when Emma tells her about herself and her love, Belinda responds in that very kind of aggressive way because like anything to do with sex is like, oh, disgusting, like, oh, and that kind of sex, like, no, absolutely not. Um, yeah. And in some ways, that I think the novel is quite a sad novel in that it is sort of about Belinda's inability, or the lack of opportunity she has to start learning about that side of herself. You know, this is an 18-year-old young woman. This is a time when actually coming into your sexual self is like a really beautiful, natural thing to be doing, to understand what kind of sexual person you want to be. But she isn't allowed to do that because of the context that she finds herself in. So there's all of that stuff going on. And then I think the kind of question about Amma's sexuality was very important for me to kind of think about because I'm a gay man, and it has been a challenge and continues to be a challenge to be a gay Ghanaian man because those things are often presented as being in conflict with each other. For me, in myself, in my body, they don't feel in conflict at all because it's like, here it is, here I am. But I think often I found myself in situations in Ghana and in the UK as well, where it's sort of suggested to me that you can be one or the other, or that being one is not compatible with the other. And it's just not true. And you know that the whole idea that being gay or queer is un-Ghanaian is not, it's just not true. And that experience I wanted to really put under the microscope in Emma's kind of character arc, that that is what she's wrestling with. And the ways, it's interesting if you think about comparing Belinda's like manic cleaning to Amma's kind of bad behavior. Because in some ways they're sort of the same thing. They're both expressions of people who feel like who they are or what their experience is not going to be accepted by the Ghanaian community, and they need to kind of get it out in some way. Like it can't just be this repressed thing. And I was really curious and keen to write something about, yeah, what happens when young Ghanaians are put into that situation where they feel that who they are is not accepted by the community that they come from, which is a community that should hold them very closely, no matter who they are. Like, what kind of behavior does that then produce? What kind of pain does that then produce? And what do young people do with that pain? Um, so that's kind of what I was looking at. And I also, and maybe this is quite a sort of punchy thing to say, I did want the novel to start conversations amongst Ghanaians in Ghana and in the UK about this conflict between Ghanaianness and queerness, and why it is a conflict, and is it really a conflict, and also to think about the fact that queerness has existed in Ghana as long as there have been people living in that bit of West Africa. It's not a new thing. And also that there are all sorts of queer practices that happen in Ghanaian communities that we all know go on that are fine and natural. And but it's really, it's fascinating, isn't it, that this book came out in 2018, and
Hmm.
then the bill has become such a, it feels like such a central part of Ghanaian politics. Um, when I wrote this book, that bill was not even, it didn't exist, it
Hmm.
didn't exist. So there's something really strange in some ways about the life of this novel, because it feels different talking about it in Ghana and amongst Ghanaians now in 2026 than it did in 2018. Like it feels like it's a more dangerous is quite a dramatic word to use, but it's a more charged novel now, I think.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a much more charged novel.
It's interesting you say that because I don't think I've read Elvin James Mensah.
Mm.
Is that right? Have I said it in the right order? So there's another author who's gay and he's written about his well, it's not his experience, but there's two characters, but I feel like there's a subtlety when
Mm.
he brings up the topic of homosexuality in his book. So it's not, I don't know, it's not that it's just part of the book.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not, I'm shouting that I'm gay. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel in
yeah,
the same way, a lot of your book doesn't focus on that. We've got to wait
yeah,
until Emma's ready to talk about it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So so I'm interested that you say that about it being charged because I think you could read most of the book and then if
And
you're
not
not
think about that.
connecting, because I felt like there was something at the beginning, like I mentioned, that
Yeah, yeah,
precursor,
yeah,
which Tanil said. But yeah, if you're not reading it like that, you wouldn't notice until you got to
yeah.
that bit. And
But
I
I
think
think,
the reaction, yes,
go on, no, go on, go on, go
I was
on.
just going to say the reaction of Belinda, I would say was in keeping with how many Ghanaians would
Yes.
react. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But I think the reason why I say it's charged, and why when I've talked about the book in Ghana, people have quite quickly, as one of the first questions, asked about the sexuality thing, is because there's a sort of focus on that. There's a sort of interest in that, or a kind of like that scene first before some of the other things, because it's such a hot topic, I guess, in the diaspora at the moment. In a way that I find really it's strange because I was in Ghana in October, I think it was, and I was talking to some
Oh, so
people there.
was I.
Were you?
Anyway,
I wonder if we were there at
yeah,
the same time. I was there for like a week, maybe. Anyway, we'll talk about
yeah, yeah.
that. But I was talking to some people when I was out there, and they were sort of like the kind of issue of gay identity has been sort of made a political talking point, but actually amongst people on the ground, like no one's that. It's not like everyone's walking around being like, "Get the gays out," or "We hate the gay." Like people are just living
Mm,
their lives, but it's been turned into a political talking point because it's useful for certain members of the political establishment. Like most
mm,
people going about they're not. I don't think people are that bothered
mm,
about it,
mm,
you know? Um, so that, yeah, that I find really interesting that it feels a bit like in the UK, the kind of intense focus on small boats and migration as being like the central political question of the day, when actually you should be focusing on the economy and those people who aren't paying their taxes and the collapse of the welfare state, et cetera, et cetera. But it's useful to look at those people over there who are coming and
mm,
jobs, et cetera, rather than looking at the real, more complicated problem. It's the same thing in Ghana, I think. Like, let's talk about this fringe issue, like fringe issue, rather than looking at the very, very stark social inequalities in Ghana and how we might address them. Let's talk about
mm.
gays. It's a tactic, you know? Anyway.
Yeah, no, I see that and that parallel that you've drawn about the small boats, small issue and
Mhm.
homosexuality. I mean, talking about that, one thing I noticed about your book was when I was reading it, Wuthering Heights was um showcased, or they were about to showcase it, and it's mentioned in your book. I'd just been to the Jeffrey Museum, which is now called the Museum of Homes. I'd
Okay.
been there like a few days before. And I noticed that there was lots, for me, I knew all your references. They were familiar. Cosby Show, Beaujolais, all sorts of things, Esther Ranson. But I'm quite keen to understand for those who read it and they're not, a Londoner or a Brit, did it feel a bit alienating to read some of those things, or did you, because those are cultural sort of
Yeah.
cues, and apart from say Cosby Show, which would be international,
Yeah.
Esther Ranson, I'm not sure, did people get that one? How did you feel? So this is a question to the people in Ghana, because I think Chris and Jen, you would have got it. All of that was Rhoda, if you're there. Or while Rhoda's thinking about it, I wanted to know from you, because it's also in America, was this something that maybe the publishers or the editors were saying, maybe you need to soften this a bit so that they understand it?
It's a really important question, this thing of cultural references, because it's quite an integral part of my writing. Like, I really like the things that make a culture, all the different things. So the food and the clothes and the things that people are reading and the music and the phrases that people use. I'm really interested in yeah, the things that make a culture distinct. And sometimes the things that people don't even realize make that their culture distinct, and all the like in jokes and all the references. And it's part of how I write. And my second novel is like that. The book I'm working on at the moment is also like that, like very tied into the details of a specific place and time and a specific community. Um, and I think the question of alienation, I sort of didn't really mind if if some people didn't get it or if they were confused by it, because that's sort of the experience of observing a culture that you're often the experience of observing culture that you're not part of. Like you don't get all of it. And the novel is sort of about that in some ways. It's about people who are often in cultural settings that they don't quite understand, but they're sort of trying to learn. So all of the characters in one way or another, um, even, Emma's parents who have been in the UK for a long time, they still have that memory of like being in the UK when they first arrived and not quite getting it. So that sense of not fully understanding the cultural cues is a theme in the novel. Um, and also, I think often, I hope, even though the reader might not completely get the nuances of a particular cultural reference, there's enough going on for them to latch onto and to hang on to that they don't feel completely like, what the hell is going on here? So you might not know who Esther Ranson is, for example, but it might be that she appears on a TV show and it's like, okay, she's a TV presenter or whatever. So do you know what I mean? There's like enough that you feel that sense of alienation, which I kind of actually want the reader to feel, but you don't feel abandoned. You know, I don't want the reader to feel abandoned and like, whoa, what's going on? Yeah, but I love
Mm,
including cultural references. I remember doing this
mm.
event once, and there was a guy in the audience, and he was like a very grumpy old white man, and he listed all of the different like cultural references, like Morley's, which is a chicken shop if you're not familiar with it. Morley's, and there's a reference to Missy Elliott, and then there's a reference to 133 buses, and he like listed them all off. It's like, why all of these specific things? Like,
Yeah.
relax. Like, it's okay, it's fine.
It sounds like he was really enraged.
Yeah, he was. I was like, it's fine. It's okay if you don't know it. It's fine.
It's one of those ones though, it's if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you just get annoyed. That's
Get
probably
to
what it was
know.
today. Exactly.
There's
Um,
always Google. I'm like,
you
there's
know what I
always
mean?
Google.
If you
If you
don't
didn't know
know
what the
something,
Cosby Show is, look it up. It's not
we have
that serious.
ample resources now. Ample resources, you know?
Mm.
There was this
Which lead?
one,
Oh,
sorry,
no,
yeah,
go for
th-
it.
yeah, there was this one reference in the book which referred to the UK TV show, I mean, UK TV soap opera Brookside,
Yeah,
where two ladies were kissing,
yeah, yeah,
and Amma saw, um, I think it was, yeah, it was Amma who saw as when she was young.
yeah,
And that was a link, and I think that was a sexual awakening
yeah, yeah,
as well. So I think this one was a particular standout out
yeah,
of all the references
yeah,
because it made Amma realize who she was, and maybe um, that's her personality, that's her persona,
yeah,
and that's what she wanted to pursue. So whether that particular moment influenced her, um, we don't know.
yeah, absolutely. And I really wanted to include that moment because I think for many gay and queer British people of my age and in my generation, that kiss on Brookside was very important. It was very, very important, particularly because, and this is how Amber experiences it, and I guess this is me sort of like transplanting some of my own experience into the novel, particularly because the way that people responded to that kiss, it kind of gave those of us who thought that we might be gay or could be queer or whatever it might be, some sense of how we might be responded to. And for a lot of people, it was quite a frightening moment, I think. And Emma's response to seeing how her parents react to it, it kind of limits her a bit. It makes her think, oh, well, if I come out, this is how they're going to behave towards me. But it was a really central part, I think, of lots of gay people's um, awakening growing up at that time. Yeah.
Really powerful. Thank you. Thanks also for that point, Chris. That was really good. I wanted, because we're running out of time, it's 7 o'clock. So I'm gonna just beg you for a few minutes, if that's okay, Michael. I wanted to talk about language and the
Mm,
use of the glossary. So you talked about not needing to explain a lot of those
yeah.
cultural signposts, and yet you have a glossary. But I have a question about the glossary because there were certain words that were not in the glossary
Yeah.
that were mentioned in the book. So
Yeah.
was that just an oversight, or was that like you can work out the rest? I can't be bothered to put all of them in. Like what was going on there? Like Bothroat wasn't in there.
What wasn't? Buffalo.
Bothroat.
Yeah, so I think often I think because those things are sort of like nouns, so they're kind of things, and they get
Okay.
explained in context. So I was sort of like that, you can figure that out. Um, but yes, the glossary is a source of great contention in the
Ah,
yeah, because I mean there are basically like two schools of thought around it. One is like, oh, why did you include this glossary? It's like pandering to white people. And then there's another, which is my kind of the reason I'll tell you why I included it. So I included it because it's a reflection of my relationship with Tree as a language. So I'm not a fluent Tree speaker at all. The glossary at the front of the book is basically the extent of my Tree. That's as far as my
wow.
goes, really. And I think I sort of wanted to be honest about that and upfront about that. And also, it's kind of a reflection of Amma's relationship with the language. So, Amma also is not a fluent Tree speaker, and there are lots of references made to the fact that she can't speak Tree very well. People make jokes about it. Belinda's kind of her interpreter, etc. So, including the glossary was sort of a reflection of the kind of complicated things that are going on with language in the novel. I'm writing bits of Tree that Tree is not my first language. It's like a sort of I wouldn't even describe it as my second language because it's not a full language in terms of my understanding of it. There's also a character in the novel who has some familiarity with it, but doesn't quite understand it. And it feels like an awkward thing in the book. Like it feels awkward in its position. It sort of like breaks the fiction of the novel in some ways because it's like this real life thing, and then you go into this made up story. And I wanted it to feel awkward, and I wanted it to feel kind of yeah, a bit crunchy because it's a complicated aspect of British Ghanaian identity, I think. And my own relationship with Tree is also complicated in the fact that or one of the reasons I don't speak Tree, is because my mum decided that it wasn't useful. It wasn't going to be useful for me to speak Tree, and or it was going to confuse me and my sisters when we were growing up to be learning both languages at the same time. But then, of course, as I'm sure many of us know who don't have Twi or don't speak it very well, it then has very significant impacts on your relationship with your Ghanaianness. And it gives those Ghanaians who are like, you're not a real Ghanaian, like quite strong ammunition, because the identity in lots of ways is in the language. And one thing that I would say is that that's not the only way of being Ghanaian. It's a really important part of the identity, but it's not. Then you can't take away my Ghanaianness from me because I don't speak one of the local languages. Both of my parents and the entirety of the family line are all from Ghana. So where do I what? Am I not Ghanaian? What? That doesn't make sense.
Mm,
But
mm.
it's such a central part of the identity that it becomes complicated saying very confidently, I am Ghanaian when you can't speak any of the languages. So that all of that stuff, I think I was trying to kind of put into the fact that there's a glossary in this book.
And I think that's the beauty of having you on, because if I'm honest, the beginning part of the book I really struggled with because I felt like you talked about it being, I can't remember the word, but basically it felt very staccato, like you'd say a whole English sentence and then a J. And it just felt for me, and I'm not a fluent tree speaker, but it just didn't feel natural from what
Yeah.
I know about the tree language and hearing it. And not just that, it was the pigeon. Like I wasn't sure if I heard you speak it, or like if I heard somebody like read out those passages, if it would sound more like what I hear when I go to Ghana
Um,
or people speak pidgin.
yeah.
But I found it very hard at the beginning of the book just to enter into it. And when I got to Britain, basically, or when Belinda got to Britain and all of that, that just felt a lot more natural. Like I really connected with that more. And I
Yeah.
don't know how other people felt, but I'm really glad you've explained that because I think that makes sense to me now.
Yeah. I think also, and this is something that I kind of learned along the process of writing, is that I think there's always a gap between speech in a novel and real speech. And I think in some ways I was kind of playing with that because I was not ever really writing, trying to like fully accurately depict the ways that people really speak. It's like a version of the way that people,
Mm,
literary version of the way that people speak. But I think some readers were expecting like a kind of like a facsimile, like a copy of like real speech in the novel. But that wasn't exactly what I was trying to do. And in some ways, one of the things that I was trying to get across was like the sort of awkwardness of switching between codes and switching between languages, because something that I was very aware of growing up were the ways that my parents, my mum and dad would move between the languages all the time. So between English and Tree, but also between different kinds of Englishes. So like English in the house and then sort of work English or English with white people. And that
mm,
was always quite a like, complicated dance moving between those things, but one that they did all the time. So I think that
mm.
language and speech and code switching is yeah a really important quite constructed part of the novel.
And we see that with the South London English. We see
Yeah,
that with the pidgin, as you've mentioned, the English. So there are lots of different
yeah,
languages that are spoken in the book, actually, when I reflected on it.
yeah, yeah.
Mm. Does anyone want to add anything? Because time's running against us. It's run.
I just asked a question in the chat about the different titles and why it's different in the US versus UK.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question because actually I'm not a big fan of the American title House Girl because I think it is quite reductive because yeah, there are two house girls in it. I mean, actually it should be called House Girls maybe. But there's also Amma, she's not a house girl. There's also the other female characters, the mothers in the novel, they're not house girls. And the novel, even though it is very much about Belinda, is also about this whole kind of community. And I think by just calling it House Girl, it does limit the focus just onto Belinda. Whereas actually Hold as a title is much more expansive and it includes lots of the other characters. What is Belinda's mother holding on to? What is Nana, Emma's mother, holding on to? You know, what is Mary holding on to? It that title Hold is a kind of lens through which to view all of the other characters. But when it was published in America, when it was coming to be published in America, the publishers were actually said, like actually in connection with something that Kirsty was saying earlier, they didn't want to change anything about any of the cultural references. They were like, this is great. I didn't have to edit a single word. But they thought that the title Hold was too abstract for an American readership and that American readers needed something more concrete. They needed to see that it was a book called House Girl, and there was going to be a house girl in it, and it was about a house girl.
Mm.
So
Okay.
that's what we went with. Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's interesting because we've spoken to other authors and they've had to change maybe the cover.
Yeah.
I've not come across anyone who's had to change the title in that other country, but these different sort of markets that you have to meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in Ghana, is it hold or is it
It's
house
Hold.
girl?
Yeah, it's Hold.
Okay, okay. If I could just squeeze two, one is an observation, and then the other one is about you mentioned your third book. So I wonder what little tidbits you can tell us. But just about the publication of Hold in 2018, and most recently, you've seen a proliferation of these British Ghanaian authors that are
Mhm.
writing, and they're situating themselves in their UK-ness. So if that is South London, I'm thinking of Anne-Marie Amoir, Jessica
Okay, look,
George, all these books. So
yeah.
I feel like you were a pioneer in
Yes.
terms of that because we've had, yes, were you waiting for that
Yeah.
statement?
Yeah.
So talk to me about that because since you wrote this book, we've seen so many others that maybe you've opened the path for them to be writing about being this identity of British and Ghanaian.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's lots of interesting things to say about that. One is that when I was writing, of course, I didn't think like, oh my God, I want to pave the way for anyone. I was just writing my book. But I think publishing is very conservative as an industry. And so they look to see if something works before they then go and like do more of it. And I think the fact that Hold did reasonably well and, you know, it was nominated for a couple of prizes and I had like a good level of exposure around it. I think it then gave some publishers a bit more confidence to be like, oh, we can publish this sort of book. And they could point to this book and be like, well, there's one of them that already exists. So, it's not like a completely alien concept to British readers. So I think that happened. But I think also something that I'm really interested in is that there is a very established and successful Nigerian and British Nigerian and American Nigerian kind of literary ecosystem. And think about Chimamanda, like there's like global weight Nigerian writers. And I think what is happening at the moment is that I think Ghanaian writing and British Ghanaian writing is having its time, is having its sort of that is getting the same kind of prominence as Nigerian writing has had for a really long time. Um, so if you think about someone like Yaa Gyasi, who's a
Mm,
Sorry, a Ghanaian American writer whose
yeah,
first novel, Homegoing, was an absolutely huge
we've
novel,
read
huge
it.
novel,
We've
and
read it.
one of my favorite novels of all time. And I think it's happening. It's happening at the moment now. I think there are more um, there's just sort of more interest in Ghanaian diaspora writing than there has been.
Mm,
Having said that, I'm also quite aware that at the moment there was like a big, and this is a broader comment about, I guess, Black British writing. There was a real focus on Black British authors in sort of 2020, 2022, when there was the big diversity push post George Floyd.
mm,
And now we've seen the DEI rollback, the sort of normalizing of far right ideologies, the kind of lack of interest in our stories. I'm beginning to see less and less publishing of Black writers,
mm,
and less kind of support being given to sustaining the careers of Black writers. And it's very frustrating to see. I think it means that lots of Black authors are sort of looking within the community and to other Black writers for opportunities rather than looking to mainstream publishing. But I think there's a bit of a shift happening at the moment, where that sort of window of opportunity for Black writers to get loads of prominence is sort of closing a little bit, which is very sad.
very, very sad. And I don't know what can be done about that because you
Yeah.
said they're looking to other writers, but what can another writer do if you're in that same boat?
Yeah, so there's a really good organization called the Black Writers Guild in the UK, which is like a kind of union for Black writers across the world. And it's sort of like I don't know, it's like a community organization. So people share opportunities, they champion each other's work. It's that sort of thing. And I think it would be amazing if in the future that became a kind of publishing house of its own. But that's a
Mm,
long way off, I think. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Before I ask my last question, and I'm aware that I've hogged the airwaves, so please, if you've got something to ask Michael, now's your chance. Because I want him to just end with talking about his new book, because I believe there was like a 10-year
Yeah.
from the thought of Hold to publishing, was that 10 years?
Yeah.
And then you just, well, I say just, but 2024, you published, um, sorry, I'm gonna say the name wrong, and
Oh, where
that's
they
really bad
fall.
of me. Yes. So I'm wondering, like, is it easier because 2024 to now, maybe you were writing the book before that. I don't know.
I think there are lots of reasons why the first one took me 10 years. Partly, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing because it was my first book. I was also learning to be a teacher and figuring out how to be an adult, and like, all those sorts of things were going on around me. Um, but I think this third book that I'm working on now is coming more quickly. So I started writing it in 2024, and I'll be finished it at the end of this year. So that's 2 years rather than 10.
Mm,
And I think part of it is to do with confidence, I suppose, and having more knowledge or skills or something like that. But also the other thing, which maybe is related to confidence, is that I'm just sort of writing in this like quite carefree way. Like I'm writing because it interests me. I'm writing because I find this particular scene funny. I'm writing for me, and I'm not so nervous about how it's going to be received or what other people think or is it going to get published. I'm sort of not as bothered about that as I was when I was writing the first one. And that
Mm.
sort of awareness of like, oh, I've got to get an agent, oh, I've got to get a publisher, I think I found quite crippling and it slowed me down. Um, Whereas, yeah, now I'm just writing for the sheer love of it and for my own entertainment more than anything else.
And does it help that you're writing in a different country? Hint, hint.
It does a bit, yeah, yeah, it does. Because I'm not, I can't really, I don't know, I don't have the agent or the publisher sort of like in my orbit. I'm sort of hidden away from it. So yeah, I do feel kind
Mm.
of in that sense too.
Mm. Okay, cool. So what can you tell us about the book?
What can I tell you? So it is a novel that is set over the course of a weekend, and it is about
Wow.
two former lovers reconnecting, and it is about forgiveness, and it is about regret, and it's about punishment, and it's about memory, and it's
Mm.
about sort of approaching middle age and the terror of that. Um, yeah, it's about all of those things, and it's actually not. There is a Ghanaian character in it, but it's probably
Mm.
the least Ghanaian book that I will write. Because the
Okay.
novel that I'm writing, so novel number four is very Ghanaian. It's like so Ghanaian. Um,
Oh, so you're writing like you've got the idea for the
I've got the
fourth
idea.
one.
Yeah, I've got the idea. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But
So watch this space.
yeah, the idea for the fourth book is a book that I've wanted to write for a really long time, about Ghana. But it's such a big, it's a big historical novel, and I've sort of wanted to work my way up to it. And I also know that it's going to take me a long time to do. So I've been putting it off 'cause it's like, oh God,
Mm.
when I start doing that, that's going to be like 7 years of work. I can't face that at the moment. So yeah,
So when you say historical, are we talking yeah, Jesse historical or
not quite that, but like pre-independence Ghana. That's all I'll say. Pre-independence Ghana.
okay, okay, cool. I like that. Well, if no one has anyone got anything lastly to say to Michael before we let him go? To Neil.
Yes, one question I had, Michael. I noticed that there was a lot of mental health themes in the book that stood out to me when Amma had her breakdown in the grocery store, when um, when Belinda was trying to get Mary to kind of almost disassociate and
Yep.
come up with this identity, Cynthia. I just wanted to know what your inspiration for that was, especially being in Ghana, being a mental health professional myself, and kind of seeing the scene that is and is not in Ghana when it comes to mental
Yeah.
health. So I was really curious about that aspect of the book and what your inspiration was.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think first observation is, this book was written in 2018 when not just in Ghana, but internationally, we had a very different language for mental health. Um,
Yeah.
it feels like night and day now in some ways. I'm not saying things are perfect now and that we're all enlightened and when we think about mental health and talk about it. But I feel like conversations about mental health and the challenges that people have around it are so much more everyday and visible, than they were when I was writing the novel. And can remember I was writing it over 10 years. Um, but I think, having said all that, I think what I was really interested in was that, uh, I felt at the time that there was such a lack of interest or a neglect in Ghanaian communities for mental health issues that it wasn't a thing that was talked about. If it was talked about, it was very much kind of like someone's mad, there's something wrong with them, they're possessed. Like stay away from that person. I never really sensed compassion around mental health issues and conversations to do with mental health. And yet, to me, it seemed like there were lots of conditions in Ghanaian communities that might very well create mental health issues. So, as we were talking earlier about the tendency in lots of Ghanaian families to not necessarily discuss difficult subject matter, that to me it may well produce certain kinds of mental health issues. The fact that we as Ghanaians live with the legacy of colonialism on our backs might produce mental health issues of one kind or another. And I think not talking about these things, not looking at them, actually does the community a disservice. But that also sounds quite blamey, and like Ghanaians should do better, like talk about mental health. Part of the issue is that, we were talking about language earlier. There isn't really, or there hasn't been for a long time, in the community, a language to talk about mental health issues. Like there aren't the words and phrases necessarily um, to kind of think about that suffering that people might go through. So I kind of wanted to shine a light on that to start conversations about it. Uh, yeah, and again, Kirsty used this phrase earlier when we were talking about sexuality, that being queer, being gay is part of the human experience. So is having mental health problems. And someone can be Ghanaian and depressed, or Ghanaian and anxious, and those things not be incompatible. There's nothing un-Ghanaian about having mental health issues. And I think that's sort of what I wanted to kind of present in one way or another.
Yeah, I just love, Michael, how you didn't stigmatize the mental health. You
Yeah,
just gave it a platform to give people the opportunity to see what it could look like.
yeah,
But it wasn't like, that's this and that's that,
yeah,
that's that. I think you did a really good job in creating that non-judgmental
yeah,
platform, but identifying it.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one else has anything they want to add, I just wanted to end with two comments that we've had from some of our members that can't be here. So Mr. Simmons, who's based in Birmingham, he said he loved the book and he actually listened to it on audio, but he
Great.
wasn't able to, yeah, be here. And then Christoph, because we're so international, Christoph is in Germany and he read the book. He's married to a Ghanaian and he said, your book has contributed to the journey I'm on in decolonizing the way that I think. So this is his actual words. The book made me think about how I look at things and question it. The more I learn and read, the more I realize my European way of thinking and the way I was trained to see them. So he's looking at how he needs to sort of decolonize that and see things differently. And he got that as part of a bigger journey, but from reading your book. And he's actually put part of that quote in, the post that I put on Instagram so you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
see it
yeah.
yourself, basically. Yeah, and also, unfortunately, Kwame wasn't able to join, but I said he's written a whole review in Tree for you to
Amazing,
read.
amazing. But I will use my beginner level tweet to decipher.
Yeah, so thank you so, so much for giving us more than an hour of your time. This has been wonderful. I think it's really given us a good insight into your book, and we'll be looking out for well, if no one's read number two, please do. And then also number three and number four when they come out as well.
Totally. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a real pleasure. Nice to meet you
Thank
all.
you. Yes,
Oh,
take
Thank
care
Thank you.
you.
take
and
care.
have a good evening.
Bye,
Bye.
Bye.
everyone.